Welcome to Artist to Artist, Hopkinton Center for the Arts web series featuring artists talking about art. Now, I'm just going to state right here that if you knew me in our days at NYU's graduate acting program, you're probably going to get a call from me about being on the show. And our next guest is certainly no exception to that rule. Boris McGiver. Boris is one of those actors you have seen on film and TV for over a generation now, hard to believe, in many of your favorite films, TV shows, and on Broadway if you've been fortunate enough to catch him on stage. He is one of the most watchable actors I know. He brings an intelligence and a unique take on characters like Tom Hammerschmidt on Netflix House of Cards, Sheriff Lindsay on Boardwalk Empire, the assassin Hirsch on Person of Interest, Lieutenant Marimo on The Wire. You've seen him on guest starring roles on The Blacklist, Flesh and Bone, Allegiance, Turn, one of my favorites, John Adams, White Collar, and Law and Order. More recently, Boris appeared as Reg on For Life on ABC and on M. Night Shyamalan's Servant on Apple TV, and he has a recurring role on Evil on CBS. You're going to recognize him from Steven Spielberg's film Lincoln, where he squared off with Tommy Lee Jones, and in films like Killing Kennedy, Steve Martin's Pink Panther, director Ang Lee's Taking Woodstock, Dark Matter with Meryl Streep, Fur with Nicole Kidman, Taxi with Jimmy Fallon, Connie and Carla, Ironweed, the list goes on, and I am so jealous of his career. He has always been an energizing and inspiring presence on and off stage when we were training together at NYU. And I still think of him as a French horn player.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and a percussionist, which I will get into and ask you about later on. Boris is one of those actors that when we were in productions together back in school, and I wasn't on stage with him at the time, I would run to the back of the house just to watch him work, just to watch his new take on a scene. He would always bring something new to the role in every performance, and whatever he brought, it would be something always that no other actor would think of. Yep, Boris is a unique talent, yet, in my opinion at least, he is a spitting image of another highly recognizable actor, his father, the extraordinary and prolific actor John McGiver. Boris McGiver, welcome to the show.
Oh, gosh, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you. And thanks for remembering my dad. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Well, I still fan out on him. As you know, a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I suddenly got a text from you from one of my favorite roles, which I will mention later on. You remember too. But I can't believe it's been 28 years, right? 28.
Oh my gosh. It has been 28 years since we graduated from NYU.
And so we've known each other for 31. I mean, a three-year program. We both could have been lawyers or dentists.
Right. Which would have been a disaster.
Okay.
In my case, yeah.
Yeah. Not bad, not bad. Now, how would you describe, when you think back of your NYU days, I have to ask you now, with 28 years of perspective on it, in hindsight, how would you describe that experience, that 3 years?
Those 3 years at NYU, you mean?
Yeah.
It's a good graduate program in acting is really going to become some type of psychoanalytical study on your own part. At some point, you will start to use your toolbox inside of yourself for the characters you play. And I think the better the acting program, the more they force you to look at your toolbox, and that's all we have is ourselves. We can take characters' ideas from outside, but at some point we have to put them in our body and our chemistry and our psyche and put them through that toolbox. And I remember it as 6 days a week, except for summers off, but 6 days a week, 1 day off, and grilling, internal working, and not even realizing how much we were actually working on ourselves. I didn't, afterwards you realize, wow, that was huge. It's therapy. It's 3 years of really intense therapy, whether you use it properly or not, but we all have to go through it if we want to come out the other end sane at all and able to use your toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really wonderful way of looking at it too. And I've had similar thoughts about it, but I've never heard it put so succinctly. And I think back on those times and everything I've done, I've shared a little bit with you, Boris, over the years on this, but I left the business for about 20 years.
Yeah.
As people who've watched the show know, and then coming back into it. But no matter what I did for a living, I used the tools, the listening skills, just the self-awareness, that knowledge to to perform in any other aspect of my working life, you know. So
Absolutely. I think studying acting as a, a, a study, as what something you want to do in higher education, is an amazing degree to have, because you can apply it to so many different jobs. Now, granted, if you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or a picket, you'll have to be specific in the education you need, but the general internal human aspect, because we're all going to be human within those roles, there's no parallel to it. It's really a wonderfully intensive study that will always serve you well, I think.
sort of a master in humanity, you know.
Yes.
At least in my case, you know,
Yeah.
there were times when I felt like, oh, okay, you know, there's some good reminders here and here to sort of tap into things that you don't know are there, or you maybe sometimes deny are there.
Yeah.
Um,
Or at the very least, you listen. You learn to go, oh, okay, and just listen. Even if you have
yeah,
nothing to say, you listen.
right, right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm teaching at Boston College these days, and one of the things I tell them early in this process in week one, you know, just really let's all just listen,
Mhm.
figure out how we feel about it, and then we decide how to respond. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's where it all starts. You know, I have a real specific memory of early in our first year together, Boris, and I don't know if you will remember this, but I mentioned in the intro that I think of you as a French horn player because you did play French horn.
Hmm.
The only person I've ever known who plays French horn.
Hmm.
And do you play still?
I have it right next to the desk, actually, hoping someday to pick it back up. But and
Ah,
I
okay.
did like a month ago, and my armature was still there, and I thought, okay, it's still
That's
there.
what I was going to ask you. I had never even heard the word armature before you mentioned it in
Yeah,
school.
embouchure, especially for a French horn player, is extremely fine and detailed. A trumpet player is a little bit bigger, tuba
Yeah.
players
Yeah.
bigger, and they're all centered. But a French horn is like this. It's very high up, and it takes very, very skilled, and you can lose it real quick. I
Yeah.
was able to hold on to it, but I sort of still play a little bit.
Good foundation, I'm sure. It's just like riding a bike, Boris. I think maybe
Just
you
like,
could have a second
just like.
career in that. You know, so the other thing I remember, the very specific memory I have of you is this percussion that you would do. Do you remember having just kind of, we were in circus class and you were over sort of leaning against a post in circus class and said, try this. And you said, two in one hand, three in the other, two in a foot and one in the other foot. You had these beats going in all your limbs. And you were just kind of banging on this post and tapping on the floor, these rhythms. And they were so complex that I found myself just kind of drooling on myself, trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about and how you were doing it. Do you remember doing that stuff?
Yeah, that's actually I spent 2 years in music school as a French horn major, but you also learn what other students are doing as well. And I remember learning that the conducting majors have to learn to do in their body up to 6 or 7 different rhythms within the same time frame. So if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 ones, so within the same 4 beats, they have to do a 3, dun dun dun, or a 2 and a 7 and a 5 all at the same time, so they can conduct all
In their body.
they get used to hearing everything, so they can conduct entire orchestra.
So that's where that comes from.
That's where it came from. Yeah,
Sorry?
that's where it came from. Other than the
Yeah.
fact it was probably manic behavior as well.
Well, I was always fascinated watching you do that and just trying to figure out how you're doing and how to keep all those rhythms going too. And I'm not sure I kind of put it together because I was aware that you did have training, but it was fun to watch, but also daunting in that I realized that you're a guy who seems to be able to sort of keep an eye on what is happening in the room while you go deep in your role. Is that safe to say? Fair
That's
to say?
interesting. I think we all do that, Jerry. I think we all do that as actors. We have this proprioception, not just proprioception being the awareness of what's happening around our body. Like if you close your eyes, I know my fingers here, I know where that is. But as actors, and I think NYU was great for this grad program, is it taught us the largesse, if you will, the largeness of the proprioception, so that it filled your awareness became very big on the stage. And I think that's something that probably we all do. And I'm sure you do it as well, whether you know it or not. As actors, you walk on stage or in a film, that's part of what we learn as actors, because you can't just be all by yourself and not know what's going on in the rest of the scene, because then you're just a flagrant idiot.
Right, stepping on the camera operator and tripping
Exactly.
over a
Yeah.
table.
No.
Absolutely, it's sort of that, to have that awareness of what's happening in the room. So I've always felt that I'm playing in an orchestra, just one
Right.
instrument in that orchestra, and that other people, you have to know what their rhythms are. You have to know what's going on.
Yeah, because for instance, just film work alone, when the camera goes from this side of the room over to here, it's going to pick up now, at the very least, if you want, it's just going to pick up this side of your face. And you're not going to, you weren't told to turn with the camera, but the camera is doing that. But you become aware of what's happening, and whether you change your body or not with that, your energy stays with the camera here, but you're still in the scene. So that's always happening, and that's just in TV, but in stage especially, you must be aware of all that's going on. Even the audience, you're never, if you get lost in a character, I like to think that people are actually going a little bit mad. They're not really acting anymore. They're just kind of spewing their own selfishness when they get lost in the character. Because then they stop listening. Yeah. And our craft is really about listening, especially in theater, and less so in TV and film, but especially in theater and acting in general. You must know what's going on around you. You have to listen to that, because it's not just about the work you've done on yourself. And then it's all those people and all those things around you. Yeah, it's a great listening thing. Yeah.
No. Now, when you think back of training at a conservatory like NYU for 3 years, what do you feel the biggest challenge was going through that process, that self-analysis and therapy, as you term it?
I think probably realizing that I was not as important as I thought I was. That I had to learn to be less selfish and think less about myself, and learn to listen more. Mm-hmm. And I think, and it's taken me, in 28 years later, every year, every job, it's always about every encounter with a human being. And that set the stage for it, was learning to just listen more. And I think the hardest was that compressed time where you are forced to stop being so selfish. Mm-hmm. It's a great tool to use in a relationship, of course, because you really should listen more in a relationship. But I think that was probably the hardest, was to realize that even all my difficulties, with your parent, or my mother was dying at the time, and it didn't, regardless of your difficulties, you still have to go to school 6 days a week and do this work with other people, doing plays, doing work. You still have to do the work. Yes, you have a hard life, but you kind of buck up and get with the program and listen to their hardships as well. That's probably the hardest, was learning to be less selfish. Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I think it's one of those things that I look at my training, and really I just remember jamming up quite a bit, just sort of locking down and just sort of holding on to things that I felt safe with doing. But the years after that were the years where the selfish muscle was able to finally relax and let go.
Yeah.
Those are the things. The hindsight from me was where things became crystal clear, and they continue to. Those lessons, when I think back and I'm teaching someone else, hearing people like you speak about it.
Yeah, and there's,
it takes a while.
It's not all going to happen to everyone the same way. If it's 3 years, it might not all happen in that 3-year program. And I was 27 when I went there. So I was 30 when I graduated. A lot of kids are already, they're out in the fields already working.
Right.
So it's all on a different timeline.
Yeah. Do you think that you had anything similar to that in your life early? Can you talk about your early years and sort of how you came to art? I mean, did you start with music, or was it a mix of the two?
In high school, I was going to be, all I ever wanted to do was fly jets for the Air Force.
Oh, that's right.
I just wanted to be an Air Force pilot and an astronaut. And eventually, I wanted to be an astronaut. My earliest memories, I can remember being up in the ceiling, a little room compartment in the ceiling, and like 4.5 years old, just Roger, NASA, we're getting a tumble roll here. We might want to adjust the yaw. And literally thinking I was an astronaut in the closet. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And in 10th grade, I made that decision to go after the Air Force Academy. And I finally actually got my acceptance in my senior year. And no, art, yeah, I was in a school play, but I had no interest in pursuing acting, even though my dad was an actor. I played French horn, yeah, and I was studious and good in music, and I was a good student, but I just wanted to fly jets. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. I got my appointment, and within 72 hours, I also got an acceptance to the Rotary Exchange program of Rotary International. They do exchange of students between schools in different countries. And I was accepted to Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden, a school there for a year. Free, and they send you off. And I talked to my liaison officer from the academy. He said, "Great." I talked to the colonels, wherever they are. They said, "Go. We'll extend your appointment till next year. That will be 81, entering in 81. And you'll come back with a language, a culture. You'll be an even better cadet." But over that year, the next 1,500 students of the academy entering school year were this much better than me, because you have to be a perfect specimen to go there physically as well. And I've always had these knee problems. And you, just before we started recording, you asked about my knee. And now I have a full knee replacement. And I had knee problems in school. They hadn't operated on me yet, which made them think, oh, we can deal with that. But the other students were this much better than me, and I got bumped. Huge heartbreak. So yeah. Falling back on French horn was, while in Sweden, I thought, oh, what am I going to do? I was heartbroken. I spent an extra 3 months there, the full 12 months, instead of going to the academy in the summer. I came back and I waited. I stayed with my mom, went home and thought, what do I have left? And I thought, oh, I play French horn a lot. Maybe I can do that. So I applied to a nearby music school in upstate New York. And then after 2 years, realized, wow, you got to be really, really good to be a musician. And I wasn't that good. I'm okay. But those kids are top. They're really top players. I left, studied sociology for 2 years. Then I thought I'd be a pre-med major. I thought I'd be a doctor, and was studying calculus and chemistry and doing my pre-med stuff to go to Swarthmore to actually do a full pre-med program. And while doing that, one of my biology labs had been cut. And a friend said, hey, I'm doing this really silly play. You want to be in it? Like, no, God, no. Yeah, come on, I won't take too much time. I won't take too much time. And I was doing How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Really, really fluff play. Truly fluff. Musical. And the fluffiest of fluffiest roles is Bud Frump. I mean, just the name alone. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just like hammed it up and had a great time. And I remember thinking, ooh, this is really cool. But I had an experience while doing that on stage where I was kind of doing a leap off stage in the spotlight. And I had this experience of in the air as I leave the stage to go off into the darkness. And I had like this time warp where my brain went, oh, there's 405 people in that audience. And there's 405 because it's a State University of New York. It's 405 people. That's all State University auditoriums are 405 people. But my brain went, there's 405 people in that audience. And there's all this energy directed at you. And my next thought was, oh, but it's not for me. It's incumbent upon me to take that energy and like a coil in an electrical coil in an engine, it takes a spark and goes and then sends it out bigger. I realized it was incumbent upon me to take the energy, but make it bigger and send it back to them. And that was my brain in like this time warp. And it was only like a split second in the air, but it felt like 10, 15 seconds. And then boom, I hit the dark stage, backstage, and I thought, what the? And then we finished the play, and I came home that night. And my mom, who had done her degree in actually higher degree in theater, she was a stage and set designer. I gave that experience. I told her that experience. My dad had been long dead at that point, and he was an actor. And I hadn't, theater was not, acting was not on my radar whatsoever. And I mentioned it to her, and she said, mm-hmm, you get it. I said, what do you think about being not going to Swarthmore and doing the doctor thing, but would it be crazy? She said, no. She said, you understand the idea of it, and I believe you're disciplined enough to undertake an artistic study. She realized, she told me that of all my kids, you were probably the most disciplined to do it. And you get the basic concept, which is to give and not just to keep. So she gave me her blessing that night. And that's kind of where it started. And I just started checking it out. And
A couple things come to mind there. One is how brave your mom was in giving you that blessing, because we both know how hard that life is, and I'm sure that you were exposed to the rockiness, the turbulence of that life, having a dad in the business, and how insecure it can be, perhaps. And I don't know, I can't speak to your experience as a family and all that, but I know that in my own, it's certainly caused upheaval from time to time, sometimes year to year for us. But wow, that's incredible for her to give you that gift of encouragement in a field where she knew darn well what you were headed for.
Yeah, and I think you're very right in saying that, because it was rocky in my family. I think that's probably why I really was resistant to the idea of being an actor, because subconsciously, even though I was 13 when he died, subconsciously I knew that no, that's not, that life is not good, because you're never around, you don't have a family, and there's no security. We had 10 kids. He worked all the time. He was a famous actor. He worked on all kinds of big projects. There wasn't a penny when he passed away. Not a penny. My mom was living on Social Security and slight veterans benefits, and there was nothing. And I think that's probably why I was resistant for so long. And yeah, I'm really happy that she gave me that blessing, that she was strong enough to go ahead, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that came to mind as you're telling us story too, Boris, is that another distinct memory I had from first year was someone asked you a question, one of the teachers asked you a question, and you said, well, I work in images. And I had never heard it put that way before. And when I heard you say that, I said, whoa, I think that's what I do. But flying by instinct. And I came to acting later. I came to it I restarted my junior year when my class was already graduated. I left school, went out to LA, hung around, lifted weights, was a janitor in a hospital, came back to school, and I started acting when I was, 20, 21 years old. And you'd been at this banging away at it. And I realized, man, I've got to catch up. I've got to be able to express myself and understand what it is I do, and not just fly by the seat of my pants. And that one phrase changed everything for me at that point in my development, where I needed to be able to put a finger on what it is that I'm doing. And that you could describe that, and you used words to describe the thought that came to you when you were leaping off the stage into the darkness, and 405 people are giving you energy, and you have to spin it, magnify it, and give it back somehow. That came in the form of, I trust, as an image to you in some way, and even your just description of it as well. For me, that was the thing that I've held on to ever since then. What are the images that drive our performance, that fuel and supercharge us, and give us an emotional perspective on our work? But I just really, I wanted to point that out to you, and thank you, because all these years later, that one phrase that you just probably never even gave a thought to, just answering a question by somebody, I work in images, was the start of, really the start of my training.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Seems like a silly thing, but it was my entry point into what the hell was going on at school.
I'll be darned. I'm glad to hear that. I don't remember saying that, but it does make sense when you think about it. It makes me think, what about actors that are blind, or actors that don't speak? I mean, do they have a different take on, like the theater for the deaf?
Right. Yeah. I wonder. I mean, I guess maybe there are visual images, and there are other things, impulses, signals, and things that people get through their emotions or through other senses that are bundled together in some way. It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
One I feel like maybe we should look into. You know? Yeah, and you mentioned your dad, and the insecurity of this profession, the instability of the profession. And he's someone who did incredible films, and just for our audience, he was in Manchurian Candidate, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Midnight Cowboys, one of my favorite films and one of my favorite characters from Midnight Cowboys, just
Great,
indelible in my head.
crazy character. Yeah.
Oh God, and I remember you sort of imitating his some of the facets of that character, and Chumley, Dr. Chumley on the TV version of Harvey in '72 when I was a little boy,
Oh, right.
and
Right.
the butterfly catcher in Gilligan's
Oh,
Island, which is the picture you sent me text. I don't know if you remember it a few years ago because you knew that I fanboyed out on your dad when I realized, wait a second, I think you might have shown me a picture of your dad as the butterfly catcher. So I still to this day am starstruck when I think of that. Yeah, I went to school with his son. Yeah, and it's one of those things I can only imagine, and really I presume that, all the amazing things that he did, that's the one that some people latch onto because it just hits at a certain age. But it was something that there was magic in those silly little television shows that a guy who has real power, real skill, technique comes in and fills it with such color that it's just indelible in my mind. This little fun little character, guy with a butterfly net on Gilligan's Island of all places.
yeah, yeah. He definitely did that. He would take the smallest of roles and just blow them up and make them again. Yeah, like you say, indelible. Funny you say the Midnight Cowboy because I just had a flash memory of. I didn't hear this because I was asleep at the time, but many of my siblings overheard this conversation where my dad got called that night from the director. His name's slipping my mind. He called him from Paris, and my dad had read the script and thought, this is just garbage, X-rated garbage. Don't you ever call me again. And yeah, because it was, it was at that point it was X-rated, and he just thought it was just trash. But after that, my mom, a couple of siblings overheard my mom say, John, we need the money. We need the money. And like beg him to say, come on, just take that back. Let him call him back. Let him know that. And eventually the director did call back and he said, and he did do it. But yeah. So
Yeah.
running those two ideas you just brought up. Yeah.
And that to me, it certainly resonates in my life. The conversations I've had with Elaine, when the monthly bills come around too, okay, to do or not to do, and it makes me think of a book I read on Jimmy Stewart, the actor Jimmy Stewart,
Right.
saying that what drove him in his career was he had a family, and that he did not have the luxury of turning work down, so he had to work all the time. So he was prolific because he would just say yes to things because for financial reasons, and you really look where that takes him. And I suppose your dad and we, you don't know when you sign on to a project how it's going to be taken.
No. Yeah, you're right. It could be the most amazing project in the world, great producers, great, backing, you're in Broadway or blah, 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 blah. It could go south so quick.
With a phone call.
With a phone call.
Or maybe opening up the trades and looking and say, oh, we're not coming back.
Yes. Yes.
The hard thing about it, there are times where it feels like you're in something and it can feel, maybe you've had a similar experience where if you haven't worked in some time and a juicy part comes up with all the right players and it's something that's deemed a prestige project, and you feel like just by your involvement, being on set, being at base camp, sitting in your trailer, you're at the center of the world. And then you get away from it, it's done, and it opens to okay reviews and, pretty good. Okay, and then people move on and you realize, oh, this is just another spoke, and you get the perspective on the work
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I think Walter Matthau, someone asked him, the great Walter Matthau, someone asked him once, so what was your big break? And he said, what do you mean? Every job's my big break. What are you talking about? They're all big breaks. I'm just hoping they're going to be a big break. Every single one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no big break, and you literally never know. Like you could, like you say, you walk on set and no, we're done, we're over. Or you walk on stage and or come to the stage door and it's closed.
Right. Yeah.
Or it turns out to be a horrible experience. Something you thought was going to be so great. No, this is going to be, oh, I'm going to love meeting those people. And it just turned out to be just so horrible.
Yeah.
And then the stuff you have no idea turns out to be, wow, stuff that sticks in your heart forever. And you had no idea it was going to be that good. You just said, oh, okay, I guess I got to do it. And it turned out to be great. You didn't never know.
Mm. And maybe you're like me in this too. Those lessons remind me to take every opportunity that I can. Number one, but when you take the opportunity, the expectation should need to be about how I'm going to spend that day, how that day is going to feel, who am I going to interact with, am I going to support my fellow players, people in the crew, are they going to support me, are we going to have some fun along the way? And that to me is the reward. When you think down the road, oh, is this going to get any hardware, any Emmy consideration, or Tonys, or any other consideration out there? That's just so far in the future that you have no control over. And the answer is always probably not.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
probably won't.
99.99999% time.
Yeah.
If you're a betting person, you would never ever bet they're going to get anything else from it. And that's when you never do anyway. So that's
And I think it comes with the more prolific. I think it's probably an easier thing to when I may do 6 of these this year. I'm not going to put my heart in just one piece. I'm going to save a little something for the next one too. And do your best and then move on like a pro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when people see this they see you and they go, I hope that people go and they look at your work if they haven't seen you in something. I don't know how that would happen, but and look at your dad's work as well and just say, and they realize, wow, this between the two of them they were kind of in everything, with a little gap while you were going to school and figuring it out, between your dad's career and yours. I've been curious about, your dad was a well-known figure in the industry, and I imagine that people in the neighborhood recognized him as well. You were upstate New York, right?
Yes.
And was that a factor in your growing up and sort of the dynamics in your neighborhood or school?
Oh, yeah. That's actually something else that also probably affected me was because he was so famous. Excuse me. But he was on TV a lot. So the teachers would see him and the students would see him. And I also grew up in a very large family, 9 siblings, and I had 5 older brothers. So in sports and all kinds of stuff, I was always compared with them, but I was always compared with one of John's boys, one of the McGiver boys. And I always, even in my first few auditions, professional auditions, I wouldn't go by Boris McGiver. I would go by Boris. Hi, my name is Boris. I wouldn't say McGiver because I didn't want to be associated with him. I think that also was partly why I denied it for so long, was because that false sense of greatness, of that flair of something other, it left a really bad taste in my mouth because it's not just elusive, it's just false. There's nothing, there's no there. And yet people want to think of that as something amazing, something huge, and give it a substance that isn't there. And especially as a young child, you think, but he's just my dad. And by the way, he's never really around much. And, so there was that way of looking at it.
Yeah. And do you think back, this is about you today, Boris, and I have curiosity about sort of how your dad's career influenced your decision to pursue acting, or whether it influenced your work itself. Did you ever sort of see him in your work? When you come back now, you sort of relatively the same age when he passed. I think we're older than your dad, I believe.
Right.
When
no, he passed at 62, but
we're 62. Okay.
We're getting there. We're pretty close.
Yeah, we're getting close. So, do you look at that work and say, do you see a sort of a genetic vein that runs through his work and your work?
I don't. I can't see that. Others have said, yeah, of course. Look at the face, look at the eyes, look at the mouth, the nose, and the way you stand. My sisters in particular have said, oh, that's dad. That's That's Dad's laugh. That's his. that's his gesture. Those are things he would do. But for me, I don't see any of it. I mean, I assume it's there, but I don't see any of that.
Yeah, I see, there's obviously a resemblance and a facial resemblance too, but I think I would not have said that, had I not known that I'd say, oh, these two guys look alike. Oh, they're related, of course, that's why. But when I think of the shows, and I think back on your work at NYU and the things that that I listed of your dads, you guys leaned into characters. You both, that the one similarity is that you lean into a character and you take chances and you bring a lot of color to it, whether it's in the writing, whether it's all coming from you. The characters are vibrant, and when I see when the role is written differently, you're going to go in different directions. So his characters were disparate, and so are yours. And to me, that's the character actor, a guy who can pivot in any direction and any genre, do any tone, any medium. And you seem to be one of those guys as well. So I don't see oh, okay, well he kind of does the old man's tricks. I've never seen that in you ever. The one thing I do see is that flexibility, that versatility, but also the intelligence and there's in some of the characters when you want to have it there's sort of a menacing quality too. They're characters that can be very frightening too. And I think you have that sort of that range about your work where you really there's a danger, I guess, in some of these characters. Your dad in Manchurian Candidate, that was a very specific role there. He's shot through the milk carton, I believe it was. That role is a darker film. But I think specifically of Midnight Cowboy, where there is sort of an insanity about the man.
Yeah.
That there was a darkness that he could go to, but it was about that story. It wasn't sort of like his bag of tricks.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate the compliment. You're very kind. If I had to say why, I guess why you would say that, I think it's big. The way I has always seen acting is we take it from the writing. It has to all come from the writing and the thoughts of that character. Well, I can't invent a character all by myself. If I do, it would have nothing to do with the play or the script as written. But when you stick to the writing of the character that you have, go back to the writing, thought to thought to thought to thought, not emotion. Mm-hmm. Never start with emotion. You can't go, what am I feeling? There's a reason it's called acting, or in almost every language, it's an action verb. It has nothing to do with feeling. It's always called playing at, or acting. There's always an action verb in the title or the word acting around the world. It's never called feeling. You don't go by what you're feeling. You go by what the thought your character is thinking, not just saying, but thinking on the page. Mm-hmm. So I think, and then whether you mean to do it or not, you're going to end up with a different character each time, because the character will have been just simply what that character's thinking. Mm-hmm. You don't ask what the character was before from the other play that he was thinking, but rather what is this character? And if you just stick to that, just that simple thing alone, you'll have this unique character unto himself or herself, mm-hmm. Simply by sticking with his or her thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's the way I've kind of always seen it, and certainly learned even more of a compressed manner from Ron, our great acting teacher, yeah. and Deborah Hecht as well. Remember Deborah, of course. Those two in particular got me. Oh no, and the music teacher, Deb
Lapidus.
Yeah, it was really all about this concentrated focusing on what's going on in the character's thoughts. Mm-hmm. Why does he say this? Why do I say use that word, and how does that word connect to that word? And that sentence, but the other character just said this, why do I say that? And then you go, why, thinking, and then the thoughts become the actions. Just thoughts alone become the initial actions, and they start to build, and then you start to find you're getting there's an intensity about them because you start to be very focused on them. They start to become the actual actions. It's not just, oh, my action is to run across the stage. Well, you're still thinking while you're running across the stage. What am I thinking? What's driving me across the stage? What, even if that's your stage direction, to run across the stage, why am I doing it? And when you come up with that, then the actual run isn't just, oh, an actor ran across the stage. You will watch, as an audience member, you'll pick immediately up that character is going for that reason, even if there's no words. If you do it properly, they will see that why you're going there. It's really about, to me, it's about those individual thought processes, and each character will be different just because of that.
This is interesting. I drive my students crazy because we're all crazy by the end of studio. But just I think of the precision of thought that has to be there, and that intentionality with every beat, so that you do have a goal in mind, and the feelings, how it comes out of you, what it looks like, takes care of itself. You know,
Right.
we're thinking about the externals.
Exactly.
Lost it.
Good. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's true. Yeah. And to do it any other way is I think is false training, personally.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think back on the training, and I've heard folks like Garrett Dillahunt, who's another wonderful character actor,
Oh,
and a good
love
friend,
Gary's work. Yeah.
describing his experience at NYU, talking, you know, sort of an amalgamation. There's Stanislavski, some Meisner, there's Paul Walker, the great theater games teacher that we lost midway through our time there, and Ron Van Loo, the person we all wanted to, well, I'll speak for me, I wanted to please in the program, our scene study teacher, who was really very much the core for me and a lot of people. But it was an amalgamation of things, and many, many different systems and methods of working. And do you, at this point, do you ascribe to any particular system more than others, or do you sort of does it change for you with the role of the job?
No, I don't ascribe. I think they all have merit. I definitely would not, if I were to teach, maybe someday we'll teach when I'm too
That'd be
old
great.
to move around. But
You get a new knee. You get a brand new knee. You're going to be going for a while. So.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm bionic now. I don't ascribe to a certain way of acting. I think it's a combination of all of them. And I guess when I'm talking about doing thought to thought, yes, that's very much what I use. But I forget also that you and I and actors have years of training in other aspects, the physical aspect where we learn to loosen, widen, stay stretched, stay full, stay aware, be proprioceptively aware, different accents, just being heard at the back of the auditorium. But all that work is, I take all that work for granted. So I think many different ways of acting can be very helpful. Even the clown work and the circus work we did with Hovey, you know, just juggling. There's an intense focus in that. Just training the mind to just 3 balls, just 3 clubs, just to focus, just to stand there and focus. Let your body be focused. And if you can't,
How
yeah,
helpful to have these circus skills, which they don't do at NYU anymore. I understand that something else has replaced it, something physical but takes
yeah,
focus. But that ultimately that's kind of the gig too. When you go and say, you know, honey, we need the money. Okay, I'm going to go do this one. Then you got to go in and compartmentalize like you've never compartmentalized before, and
yeah,
focus on the clubs. Just juggle that role, and just
yeah,
focus on that. Don't worry about whether there's something you need to be doing. If you've committed to doing it, you've got to focus, have the thoughts, and go beat to beat like everybody
yeah.
else.
I remember, it's funny, I just had a thought of, remember Jim Calder as well?
Oh,
Jim
sure.
Calder, I mean, amazing circus work as well. He was a tremendous teacher in his own right. One of the things he taught us, we all stood in a circle, and 2 people would go into the circle and be dogs. And there was a bone. There was 1 bone on the floor.
Mhm.
And he just like, he was training us to just be absolutely focused on and centered in this moment, and just, I remember just like snarling at Stan Cahill, and the two of us just snarling at each other because there was one bone, and we were just being dogs. I remember thinking, oh, God, right. Animals don't go, how do I look? Should I really go after that bone? Is that big enough bone? I'm not sure I'm going to get paid well enough. They just go. And Paul Walker's work as well, where, we'd have you at one side of the room and then the other actors over here, and you suddenly realize from two different mountains, you've fallen in love and you run down and there's suddenly a big ball of flame and you can't get through, but you must tell this person you love them before they die. And go, instant theater. And you're like, oh, I love you. And it just becomes this singular focus. And you take that as one of your tools in your toolkit, and that becomes something, and forget about it, but it's had a profound effect upon how you approach the moment. Be focused. There's nothing else.
And the moment that you feel like I've got to be an entertaining dog looking for the bone, the scene's dead. You lose that focus on the bone.
Yes.
And you're thinking about the audience.
Yes.
The scene's over,
Yeah. Oddly enough, we never ever forget about the audience. So the reason for that training of focus is because we start out thinking, there's an audience out there. Oh my God. So you have to really focus your work to be here, because part of you will never ever forget there's an audience there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you do, you've gone insane and you're not acting anymore, and you're going to get fired, and you end up in a home somewhere. But that part of your brain that always hangs on is going to be there anyway. And when you start out, that's all there is. Like, it's stage fright because there's an audience. But we taught when we learn to focus, just stay here.
Mm-hmm. Staying on that and just sort of worrying about, you just said something that really was encouraging to me. So I can actually go insane and still have a place to live. I will wind up in a home somewhere.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we don't lose, the ACA or Obamacare.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I was just starting to ask. You've worked with some pretty darn good directors, Steven Spielberg, Ang Lee. What have you learned from working with folks like that?
Since you bring up Spielberg, I had never met him, of course. I get the role and I show up on set. And if I had not known what Steven Spielberg looked like, I would not have any clue that was Steven Spielberg, because of what he was doing on set, which was he was just walking around, checking out how the camera was doing to get the focus, and just being super kind and aware and checking in with people. He wasn't doing any I'm the director thing. And he was it was ultimately so kind. It was incredibly kind and considerate, truly considerate. And just in seeing that, I thought, wow, if anyone had the right to have an ego and lord it over people, Steven Spielberg. I mean, look, you can't not give him that. If he wants to go there, fine. No. He's not going to stop. He's the king. He's going to stay up there. But he wasn't at all. It was unbelievable how kind he was. Unbelievable how gracious. When things went wrong, okay, let's just try it again. Is your seat okay? How is that? You want to adjust the chair or the table? No, it's good. You're like, don't worry about it. We'll just do it again. It's okay. Do we need to take a break? I was that stuck with me in a very large way. So when I think of directors, that's like what kind of things I remember. That's one of the bigger ones. And when I see other directors I've seen more and more directors do that now. I think the zeitgeist is changing in the arts. And I think people are learning that you can't have that type of ego and get stuff done, really. And I think that the zeitgeist seems to be headed towards, we're aware that you get more from people just to be kind. Just be gracious. We're all in this together. Why not?
What a novel idea that is. Just be kind. Just be kind. Now, Boris, we have about 10 minutes left. Would you mind answering a few questions from some folks who are watching?
I wouldn't mind at all. Let me plug my computer. I'm just going to lean over and plug this in so I don't lose you. Okay, I'm charging. And my computer's charging too.
Great, thanks. So the first question is, what was the best advice you received as a young actor starting out? Do you remember
Oh,
the
wow.
best advice you received?
It's something I think about a lot, even talking to you, is this. Ron Van Loo in my callbacks for NYU said, okay, that's great. Could you try that again? And just let me bring this table over in front of you. And just sit there. I can do the speech from the chair, and I'll put this table in front of you. Just put your hands on the table and leave them on the table while you do the monologue. And I thought, what? And then I found myself starting going, and he was teaching me focus, but that thing about, I still speak with my hands, but that right there in the callback, it had a big effect upon me. That's definitely had a big effect upon me. Because we can always we can dissipate so much of our energy in many different ways, not just by hand gestures, but with thoughts and speaking too fast or not really focusing on what am I doing? I'm just talking to someone. I'm just talking to someone. That's all. So yeah, that's probably the most powerful thing in a while. Yeah.
It's funny how the simplest specific things will stay with you and inform everything. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any roles that you regret taking or regret passing on? You may
No,
not be able to answer some of these, some of this, but
I've never had the chance to really pass on many
yeah.
roles because I've usually taken roles that were offered to me. Um, the regret comes in seeing how it turned into. You realize, oh, these producers and directors aren't really trying to make a work of art. They're actually just trying to make a buck.
Mm,
And then you realize afterwards, oh man, I put so much energy into this. And then you're stuck in a contract for a while and like, oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Those
That's
are
part of
regret.
some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Boris, I want to thank you so much for taking the time
Oh gosh,
on
it's been lovely, and just all the memories as well. And then I appreciate the conversation. It's been fun, Jerry.
I look forward to seeing you in person one day soon. I'm hoping that my trips to New York will start to pick up again when we're all allowed to be together and actually
Yeah.
audition in place. But hopefully that we'll coordinate one of our trips down there and see each other.
Oh, that'd be lovely. That'd really be lovely.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. We'll have some sort of a reunion somehow.
Right.
So,
Yes.
Boris, thank you very much for being on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sometime when you want to promote something coming up in the future, we'll love to have you back on.
Okay. You got a deal. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, man.
Thanks.